Good evening. My name is Elian Ramos, and I'm your host tonight, as always. Welcome to tonight's discussion. As you know, this whole month we've been celebrating International Women's Month, and this is the one month of the year that we have chosen to highlight the contributions of women everywhere. Unfortunately, when we're talking about Latinas, little is discussed about the contributions that we make to so many different segments of society, the economy, and every other segment. And so, and we happen to be the fastest growing segment of the population, Latino women. Plus, we got more issues than Vogue. And so, you know, tonight we are going to be discussing some of these issues. As you know, we are usually not you know, the way that issues are usually framed, we are not part of the discussion in many times, and we're mostly invisible when it comes to being pundits or being talking heads across the board. And so tonight I have a group of women here who are some of the most powerful women who are working on behalf of Latinas and Latinos all over the country. And we're going to have a conversation tonight that's going to be talking about reproductive rights. We're going to be talking about equal pay, political participation, all of that good stuff that that affects Latinas in particular, but that affects all of us in general. And some of my guests here tonight are, let me start with Stephanie Román from the National Council of La Raza. How are you, Stephanie?
I am really well, and I'm happy to be on.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Sure.
My next guest is Ruby White Starr from Casa de Esperanza. Ruby, how are you?
Hi, great. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for being here also. My next guest is Alex Manriquez from Hispanas Organized for Political Equality. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you for having us.
Awesome. No, we're very happy to have you tonight. My last guest, but not least at all, is Daniela Ramirez from Planned Parenthood for America. How are you, Daniela?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for agreeing to be with us tonight. We're so excited about this conversation because, you know, this is a conversation that very rarely happens, and we want to hear everything that your organizations are doing to help Latinas to overcome some of these issues that we have, and also, you know, and to highlight the contributions that we have been making to the United States of America. So let's start with that. Let's start with tell us about what your organizations are doing on behalf of Latinas in the U.S. And anybody can jump in.
Well, I'll go ahead and start.
Let's start with Stephanie.
Sure. So like I said, I work at NCLR, the National Council of La Raza, and we're the largest national Latino civil rights and advocacy organization in the U.S. We work together with nearly 300 affiliate organizations in 41 states in Puerto Rico. So, and we work on a lot of different issues that affect Latinos, but Latinas especially as well. And so these issues are health, civil rights and immigration, education, economy, which is what I do, health. And so a part of what I do is really looking at economic issues, and the goal is to ensure that Latinos and Latinas are able to fully contribute and share in economic opportunities. And as a Latina, I really try to bring the gender lens to the work that we're doing. Latina women face a lot of different economic issues than Latino men and that other women, and I'm sure we'll get into it later, but you know, some of these issues are the wage gap, a lack of access to paid sick days, and so we try to look at that and really address that through policy change.
Awesome, and I think that's exactly what is needed, right? So let's go with Ruby now. Ruby, what does your organization do, and what is your title, all of that good stuff?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm with Casa de Esperanza, and Casa de Esperanza is the premier leader in the domestic violence movement, addressing issues of violence against women, specifically in the Latino community. We are headquartered in Minneapolis, but our staff nationally is all over the country. We still operate a domestic violence shelter in the Twin Cities that does shelter services, community engagement, different strategies to address domestic violence. However, on the national front, we have a research division. Our staff operates out of Austin. We also do policy work with staff in DC, and we have training and technical assistance that we do all over the country to basically educate people on all the issues that are related to violence against women. That could include domestic violence, the intersecting issues around young people with dating violence and delinquency, sexual assault, particularly on campus, and all kinds of intersecting issues that, like we just said, we'll get into a little bit more.
Some very important work, essential, especially with the epidemic of domestic violence in our community. Let me continue down the line. Alex, can you tell us a little bit about what HOPE does?
Sure. So HOPE is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. We're committed to ensuring political and economic parity for Latinas through leadership, advocacy, and education. So that's really the three areas that we focus on. We're in LA, and we have two leadership programs. We have the Hope Leadership Institute, which is geared towards the professional Latina, and we have the Hope Youth Leadership Program, which is high school juniors, and that focuses on juniors that are mid-level, so getting a 2.5 or greater. They're not the best students, but they're not the worst, and that's usually where we find the need. We're also working on a college program to bridge the gap between the two, so that should be coming up soon as well. We hold two conferences, which we're really known for, the Latina History Day Conference, which just happened at the beginning of March. That really helps us celebrate Latina history, just like you were talking about, and helps empower the Latinas here in California. And we're holding our next conference in May, our Latina Action Day Conference. We go up to Sacramento, and we mobilize Latina leaders to help them learn how to advocate for issues that are important to them. It's a full-day policy conference, and then they actually go to the Capitol to do visits with legislators. So really great. That's what we do. We do continuous education, and it's a fantastic organization to be a part of.
Nice. And when is the conference?
The conference is May 10th.
Oh, nice. Nice. Send the information over, please. I would love to attend.
Yes. Registration's open.
Okay, and so Daniela, can you tell us a little bit about what PPFA does?
Yes. So Planned Parenthood Federation of America is one of the largest providers of affordable and high-quality health care across the country. We serve a high percentage of Latino patients, and for many of our Latino patients, actually, we are their only health care provider. We also, on the Planned Parenthood Action Fund side of the house, where we do our advocacy, we advocate for issues that we know that relate to reproductive rights, but many in terms of Latinos that Latinos care about. We advocate for immigration reform, amongst many other things, which I know we'll talk about more here today. And we also have large community programs to engage the Latino community, including our Promotoras de Salud program, where women go out into people's homes to teach them about sex education, reproductive health information, encourage them to visit a healthcare provider. We also have political Latino organizers known as our Raiz program, and we are also the largest provider of sex education in the country.
Nice. So, and this is very funny because, and I'm so glad that each of you accepted to be here tonight, because when we talk about Latino issues, usually the only thing, you see it on the debates all the time, the political debates, is the only thing that they talk about, that people talk about when you talk about Latinos is immigration. But, we're not going to discount the importance of immigration in terms of an issue. It's a very essential issue to our community. We're all immigrants, and even if it's from past generations, but obviously there are other issues that are equally important, and especially for Latinas. So let's talk a little bit about what are some of those issues that you believe we are not paying so much attention to necessarily, but that are essential to Latinas when we're talking about Latinas. And anybody can jump in.
That's actually one of my pet peeves that I say all the time when we're working. We get called for the same issues all the time, and it usually, not that they're not important, as you said, they are. Immigration obviously is very important, and so is language access, which is another issue that we get called on quite a bit. But we do a lot more than immigration and language access. A lot of issues intersect with issues that are related to violence against women, sexual assault, like I said, specifically on campus, trafficking, particularly of children, and labor trafficking is a big issue for us. Housing, because obviously domestic violence and having access to housing are very much interconnected, because women need to have a place to go if they're going to may have other options. Equal pay, there needs to be economic justice so that women have the abilities to be self-sufficient. And we kind of find that issues that are important generally to most people are important to Latinas. It just involves framing the issues around the implications of what is important to our communities. And people forget that a lot of times.
Oh my God, yes. Anybody else wants to jump in? Please, guys, jump in. I know how you all feel about this.
So, yeah, I agree. I think there are so many issues that are important to Latinas that we often don't really have the space to talk about. Two issues that I'll mention briefly. One of them is access to paid leave, and another one is retirement security. And I know these don't sound like the sexiest topics, but they're actually so important. Latinas have the lowest access to paid sick days among all women, and this is really concerning given the economic and health benefits of paid sick days. And so if you have a Latina woman who's already working a low-wage job and she gets sick or her child gets sick and she doesn't have a paid sick day, she either loses a day's wages, which could be really detrimental, or she goes to work sick. And retirement,
fired, right?
Yeah, or risking your job. And retirement security, actually Latinos have longer life expectancies than the general population. So Latinos are going to be living into retirement years more, and actually Latinas have the highest age life expectancy. So this is a big issue because currently nearly 1 in 5 elderly Latinas live in poverty, and without Social Security, this would increase to half of all Latinas who are 65 and older. So a lot of issues that we should be talking about more.
Oh my God.
I completely agree.
Go ahead, Alex.
I was going to say what we believe is that it goes back to talking about access, right? Access and affordability to healthcare, to education, and having that conversation around economic well-being, understanding at 35 that you need to be thinking about retirement and what does it mean to invest and how do I do that. So for us, those are issues that need to be talked about more and that we try to talk about.
I would just add to, I'm so glad to be a part of this panel representing a reproductive health organization, because I think that is an issue that a lot of Latinos care about. And unfortunately, there is this stereotype of the Latino community that all Latinos are very conservative, very religious, and therefore that means that all Latinos are very anti-abortion, which is actually not true. And reproductive health care is also, I mean, abortion is a really important part of it, but it also includes a wide range of other services that we provide and that Latinos and all people need. And the other thing that I was going to mention too that I think is a crucial issue for Latinos is environmental justice. We know that environmental waste and highly polluted areas are located in neighborhoods that are predominantly made up of communities of color, oftentimes Latino communities. To give a Latino-specific example, today is the last day of Farm Workers Awareness Week, and in the farm worker community, there's high exposure to pesticides that have proven to have negative health effects, including negative reproductive health effects, but all around healthcare as well. So that is something that is also disproportionately impacting our community.
And thank you so much for bringing environmental awareness into all of this, because it's also something that we don't talk about necessarily. But all of these issues, as we know, because we're in this space, right, and we're working on different kind of issues. But for me, for example, I cannot speak for all of you, but for me, I cannot talk about health without talking about the environment, or without talking about the poverty line, or without talking about the reproductive health, or any of these issues that we're talking about, because they're all the same and they're all interrelated, and they're, when you don't have a population with access to education, or to good health care, or to good protection from environmental harm, then you're creating all of these other social problems that are kind of collateral, but are all related, right? But okay, so let's try to bring it down now, land the topics a little bit. Let's talk about the economy first, and I want to go to Stephanie. The U.S. has long suffered from what we call the racial wealth gap, meaning that people of color earn less money than the white counterparts. And when you control for education and all of that, that gap really doesn't get any narrower. So, but within that, the Latinas actually are hit harder than anybody else, because, for example, where a white woman will make 78 cents for every dollar that a man makes, a Latina will make 50 cents, or 50.6 cents. Or no, even less, is 56 cents for every dollar that a male makes. And so there are so many people that deny this. Stephanie, what would you say to somebody who tells you, oh, that's been disproven, or that's not factual? What is the reality that you see in the work that you do?
Well, I'm sure that I can speak to the research, the number reality, but I'm sure a lot of Latinas out there can tell you it is real, and it's impacting a lot of people's lives. But you're right, Latinos continue to experience the largest pay gap of all groups and have the lowest earnings compared to women of every other group and men of every other group. And the wage gap is very real. Research shows us that the main drivers behind the gender and racial wealth gap are, or the wage gap are, they're multi-pronged, right? They include discrimination, occupational segregation, and a lack of work-family support. So, and interestingly, as much as 40% of the wage gap is unexplained, and this is likely due to discrimination. So, as women of color, Latinas experience double the burden of both a gender pay gap and a racial pay gap. And so for Latinas specifically, a lot of them tend to be concentrated in low-wage service occupations. And so it's really an issue about job quality as well, where nearly twice as many women as men work in occupations that pay poverty wages.
Wow, and we're gonna go into how we can move the needle on all of these issues a little later in the conversation. So thank you for that, because I don't think that people understand the dimensions of this problem. It's really something that affects people on a very real way in their everyday lives. So I'm going to move on now to Sarah. And Sarah, I know your organization does a lot of work in terms of violence against women. So do you have statistics that you can share with us in terms of domestic violence, sexual assault, when it comes to Latinas specifically, and why do you think these are such huge issues in our community?
Do you mean Ruby? I don't think there's a Sarah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry. Yes. As far as prevalence, according to the CDC, about 1/3 of all Latinas will experience domestic violence in their lifetime, and the National Crime Survey, I think that's what it's called, National Crime Victimization Survey, 1 in 6 Latina women will experience sexual assault. And despite there's kind of myths out there that somehow it's more prevalent in our culture, that we're more violent than other cultures, and it's just really untrue, and it's really important for us to dispel those myths. The statistics demonstrate that we have domestic violence in our communities at an equal level to those of the general population. But what is true is that Latino communities often have much fewer culturally specific resources to turn to when these types of things happen, which make it much harder to leave those relationships if that is what they want to do. Often Latina women don't want the kind of resources available. They're less likely to go to a shelter, for example, because they're more likely to go with family or friends, and that's who they're going to reach out to. They often don't want to leave the relationships. They just want the violence to stop. They want help with ceasing the violence, not necessarily taking their children away from their fathers. They also often don't want to call the police. And you'll notice that a lot of public awareness campaigns, for example, that's the message that they give a lot of times, making people feel sometimes more trapped. If you all will recall when they did the Super Bowl ad last year, it was a big ad that came out. They kind of show a house in disarray, and the woman's on the phone, and it looks like she's calling to order a pizza, but 911 figures out that she wants the police called. And those messages that might resonate in the Latino community, for example, sometimes don't speak to the Latino community because that's not who they're going to call for a variety of reasons that we all are aware of. Some of them related to immigration, but not always. Even people that have that aren't documented, that live in this country, have a lot of reasons to mistrust police and those kinds of and different systems that tend to marginalize them and treat them disproportionately, and so that becomes a problem for us. Beyond prevalence statistics, though, what we did a study as part of our Decimos No Más campaign. A lot of people are familiar with No More, and so Casa de Esperanza operates the No Más campaign. And as part of that campaign, we did a study and found that nearly 2/3 of Latina women who knew a victim of domestic violence, and actually men and women who knew a victim, say that they had intervened and did something to help the victim. So that's something that's positive and changing in our community. And 83% of Latina men and women also say that they want to talk to their children about these issues, and they just don't necessarily know how. So that's how we focused our campaign, on stopping that intergenerational cycle of violence and educating parents. That's what we did instead of the other messages that didn't resonate with our community. And so these types of things are demonstrating that we have the strength in our communities to stop the cycle of violence with more education. And so that's where we focus our efforts at Casa de Esperanza.
It's so important to focus on cultural issues, the cultural aspects of the way that our people respond to things, because so many times you can go with the right message, but it's not the message that resonates, like you mentioned. And so it's so important. Thank you for all the work that you're doing in terms of that. And equally important, in Daniela, I'm gonna turn to you now. You mentioned before about the fact that people always think that Latinos are this conservative about reproductive issues, and we all know reproductive issues are not necessarily just abortion, right? There's so many things that have to do with the reproductive health of our people that are not necessarily working properly. So can you tell us a little bit about how culture plays into that, and what are the major battles Latinas should be concerned about or are kind of battling in terms of reproductive issues right now?
Sure. So I think it's important to know that the majority of Latinos support sex education, and they also support birth control and access to abortion. Unfortunately, we haven't had strong polling on this in a while, because there are, of course, issues with how polling is done and who gets asked these questions and how this research is reported. But thankfully, to the National Latina Institute of Reproductive Health, they did a recent poll on Latino voters that showed their high rates of 69% of Latinos believe that abortion should remain legal in this country. 89 or 82, I'm sorry, believe that it's something that should be a woman's personal decision without politicians' interference. So these are the facts that we need to lift up to combat some of those stereotypes, as this being particularly taboo or controversial in the Latino community. I would say in terms of things that Latinos should be aware of fights coming up, there is the Supreme Court case that was heard a few weeks ago in March. It's the whole women's health case with a Texas provider, but it actually has national implications that will decide essentially who has the right to access abortion in this country. And in that case, not only because it's based in Texas, which has a heavy Latino population, but nationally will have impacts as well. Another thing, and this goes in line with the efforts to defund Planned Parenthood at a national level. What that means is that they would actually, and many politicians, including all of the GOP candidates for president, have pushed for that. What that means would be blocking access to care for patients who access their care via Medicaid. We also know that a high percentage of those Medicaid patients are Latinos. We also know that Latinos are more likely to be uninsured and also more likely to be undocumented than other communities. And because of that, they are less likely to be able to access care. And because of that, they are more likely to suffer from reproductive health and general health problems. We know they have higher rates of reproductive cancers, and being undocumented can also make it difficult to access care. And we at Planned Parenthood see patients regardless of immigration status, which is not something that everyone realizes, so I just wanted to lift that up. I mentioned this all to say that this is an issue that does deeply impact our community, and that it is an issue that Latino voters care about and mobilize the community to vote. So I think being conscious of the fights that are going on right now is really important for the community, and then also showing up to support the issues that you care about and voting are really strong ways to make an impact.
Yeah, and I think you framed it perfectly, because like we said before, all the issues are connected, and everything that happens in one area affects the next. And so now that we have talked about the economic issues, the reproductive issues, and the violence issues, how are all of these connected to political power in terms of participation and involvement and running for office? I'm going to turn to Alex now, and I know that Hope is doing a lot of work on that, but the same way that these issues affect everything else, it also affects the way that women have access to, or even the time or the means to get involved in politics. So Alex, can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. So really the issue goes back to access and being engaged, right? So making sure that Latinas are engaged and have a spot at every table. It's not just, in the boardroom. It is everywhere there's an issue. We need to be giving our opinion because we have a unique perspective that can really help influence how business as usual is getting done, right? So we believe that Latinas should have access to commissions and corporate boards, really because that's where the change is going to be made immediately, right? They get to see the budgets that they're dealing with and be able to make the changes to their communities now. So we know that in 2015 there were only 2,186 Latina elected officials nationwide. There's over 500,000 positions. So it's not even 1%. And we represent a much larger aspect of that. And So we need our voice to be heard. In order to do that, we need to encourage Latinas to participate in the process. And the way that we do that is through a program we have called the Latina Appointments Collaborative. We actually train Latinas to prepare to be on those commissions and on those boards. And so they leave learning not only what they need to do, but learning from and hearing from other elected officials on really why it's important that they do this and why they should step into those roles. When you are, like I said, when you're on a commission, you actually see the effect immediately. So being on those commissions and on those boards are really what helps propel the Latina into running for elected office. So that's what we're doing. That's what we think is really going to help.
And I think that once, you know, when you think about running for office and all that, that can seem like, oh my God, that's like an impossible kind of feat. But once you get involved in at a smaller capacity and you start to see that you could make, even if it's a small impact, but you could make some impact, then you get to become more and more involved. And this is what really inspires people to eventually want to run for higher offices, right? So I applaud the work that you're doing in terms of that. I hope. I really admire your work. So anyway, speaking of politics, let's talk about this, because I've been watching the debates, and you know, sometimes the questions are so stupid, and so, you know, I think they kind of insult the intelligence of people who actually care about voting and getting involved. So if you had the chance to ask the current candidates of any party, we're not partisan here, what would you ask them that is related to Latinas? What kind of things do they have to start paying attention to?
For us, I think the biggest question we'd want to know is, and like you said, from both parties, is how are they going to ensure that their cabinet or their administration reflect the Latina population, right? How will Latinas play a role in the administration? That's what we want to know.
Great question. Anybody else?
I think given the toxic tone that our current political discourse is taking, I think Latinas and a lot of their fellow Americans would like to know what candidates commit to do to foster an environment where all people are respected and we can work towards solutions rather than really just stirring division. Obviously, there are a lot of other questions like, you know, what will candidates do to close the wage gap, which isn't projected to close until 2058. But yeah, I think the big question is how do we get candidates to foster an environment where we can collaborate and actually get things done for the people who need a lot of really helpful policies in their lives.
And
I wish that at times we could ask them about particular issues and then ask them to elaborate more in terms of what that means in the culturally relevant context, to say what would that mean for Latinos after they kind of say where they're going. In a way, it's kind of, I mean, their feelings and thoughts basically come out anyways on issues as they speak. And if you look at the history they have on working on that issue or not working on the issue, or worse, even contributing negatively to that issue. And so for all those reasons, I kind of like to think that it's really important that we spend our time educating Latino and Latina voters on those things rather than the sound bites that they give us, so that then we have a real better understanding of the directions that we should go.
Very important, very important. And we're going to get to that in a second, Ruby, so thank you for bringing it up. And so let's go to Daniela. Daniela, what's your question?
Oh, sure. So I would want to ask, you know, I think it's been proven that attacking reproductive health care isn't an effective political strategy. And they all seem to be really pandering for the Latino vote because we are such a powerful voting bloc. So I just would want to know how they plan on doing that, but still attacking reproductive health, an issue that Latinos support. Specifically, I think we all saw recently the really horrible remarks that Donald Trump made, stating that women should be criminalized for having abortions, and then walking that back a little bit to say that abortion providers should be criminalized. And it's obviously such a dangerous issue, and it implies when that happens, there are certain consequences that he would have to answer to, because we all know when abortion becomes criminalized, it just moves underground and becomes less safe. And particularly for women who are from countries, and many Latin American countries here, that where abortion is illegal, they've seen the harm and damage that that's done to their own community, and that's not something that they want to see replicated here in America. A long-winded question, but I want to know what their strategy is on reproductive health care.
And especially also because even if you know, like Trump said when he was backtracking his comment from earlier this week, is, you know, even if you just say, oh, we're going to punish the provider, that also is inciting violence, and we don't want to see any more of that violence going on in any community, really. So thank you. That's a great question. All great questions. So now, how do you think all of these things that we're talking about, you know, whether it's violence or whether it's, you know, women's reproductive rights or the economic development and all of this, how is this going to affect the involvement of Latinas? We have an election coming up pretty soon. We have elections going up to June, the primaries and all of that, but the main election. How do you think this is going to prompt Latinas specifically to go to the polls? What are your predictions? Anybody can jump in on this.
I'll go first because I think I suspect that it's going to increase the amount of Latinas. I can speak specifically. I mean, one way that I know how we do it, because it's Cesar Chavez's birthday today, right? So that takes me automatically to this idea of organizing. And organizing is going to be a big way. We really have to get out and make sure that we participate and get people involved in voter registration drives, because there's so much being done right now to try to keep us from the polls. And I also want to say one thing. The reason why I think it'll be more is it's really instigating a lot of conversation. I know in my own home, for example, I have a niece who is going through troubles right now, who has 3 young children, and she's living with me right now. And I'll find sometimes even her children, her son sometimes will say, I'm voting Trump. And we're not sure if he's kidding or if he's trying to incite us or what, but it opens up conversations. And so I know me and her have now, she's wanted to learn a lot more. And so that's another strategy that we can use to get. She was not into politics at all prior to living with me, but now asking me questions and learning more about the issues, and me talking to her kids about what it means and what they're saying. Their father was actually deported, which is one of the reasons that they're here. He's been in this country for many years. And not even deported, they kept asking for more and more. It's become so incredibly, even when you've been married and have grown children in this country, to do all the right things and then eventually get one little thing wrong and not be allowed to come back when you've tried to do the right thing for so long. And so now those conversations are helping them to have a better understanding. And now she is someone that might not have voted prior to that, but having that opportunity to engage with other Latinas has opened her up, and she's really excited about the voting process now. So we have to think about those one-on-one things too.
Mm-hmm. And how we fire up people, you know, based on what the things that they care about personally, right? That is exactly. So important. Yeah, honestly, and thank you for that, Ruby. That's a great point. And sure. Who else wants to go?
I'll just say, go ahead.
Thank you. For us, it does go back to education, right? As long as we continue to educate our fellow Latinas, and not only on the issues, but what they need to do, right, to register, what your state requires. Do you need to have ID when you go to the polls? Whatever that is, getting them prepared to actually make that the voting process a little bit easier. And then it's not just about getting yourself registered, getting yourself to the poll. It's about taking 10 of your friends and family to go with you, right? To make sure that we're getting more and more people out there, because there's a ton of people we know that just, oh, it doesn't matter, or I'm not going to do it. Well, those are the people we actually need to go out there and register and vote.
And like we always say, right, it's like each one bring one, right, at least.
And for us, what we're doing is a campaign. So we're running a Hope Votes 2016 campaign. We're encouraging voter registration and aiming to get 2,016 Latinas registered to vote this year. So if you guys know anybody who needs to register, send them our way, and we'd love to get them all registered and signed up.
Beautiful, thank you, and a big applause for you for that kind of work. That's exactly what needs to happen. And I see, Stephanie, you want to go next?
Yeah, there are so many. So kind of going off of that, I think that first of all, yes, we need to get Latinos. A lot of times it's access to registration or information. Latinos are a young community. For, I think, nearly 1 million Latinos, it's about 800,000 will turn 18 every year. So a lot of Latinos in our community, Latinas, will be first-time voters, or sometimes the first voter in their families. So, you know, some of the things we take for granted, where do you register, where do you go, how do you do it, this will really, you know, making it easier, having access. NCLR is also doing some voter engagement and registration, and we actually released an app that registers new voters in less than 3 minutes. So you do it on the phone. Once you're done, you pass it to someone else. They register, and you know, it's a really good way to really access some of our younger community members. It's in both languages. But I think that in terms of getting people out to vote, Latinas, Latinos, we're watching. We hear what's going on. We see what's going on. We also see what's happening in our own paychecks, in our own sort of economic situation. And something that I think is really interesting is that NCLR, we conducted a poll of registered Latino voters, and something that we found is that in the minds of Latino voters, they link the economy with immigration reform. So they think the economy will worsen if a candidate who strongly opposes immigration reform is elected. And so, you know, these issues, like you were saying, these issues are all connected, and I think that those are going to get our community out there.
Beautiful. And then Daniela?
Yes, so I think we do voter mobilization and voter engagement and registration at the organizer level as well. But I think nationally and on the Planned Parenthood Action Fund side, we really are more focusing on lifting up what's at stake in the election and making sure that Latinos are educated on all of that and how these issues intersect. So not just what's at stake in terms of reproductive health care, which is a lot, but again, talking about how that intersects with immigration, with being wages, with, you know, if you have a low-paying job, you may not be able to take off work to go travel to your healthcare center to get a regular checkup or go get something checked out. You might not have access to transportation that allows you to do that. All of these issues, you might live in a neighborhood that has a poorer environment, so you might have more health issues. All of the things that intersect are things that candidates have either positive or negative views on that are running in the election, and that you need to be aware of how it's going to play out depending on who wins. So thinking about that when you go to the polls.
And I want to bring all of these beautiful thoughts and beautiful recommendations that you have given in terms of mobilizing our people, because the first step to mobilizing is obviously supporting organizations like yours who are doing all of this beautiful work, and that our community may not be so aware that you are out there and that there's help you know, to get all of these things done. So I wanted to very briefly, because we ran out of, you know, we went over time, and I don't want to, you know, I want to be respectful of your time since we went so over. But tell us how people can support all of these beautiful initiatives that your organizations are holding and doing. Anyone can go first. Go ahead, Daniela.
So I would say our website has a lot of great resources on how to get involved, especially the Planned Parenthood Action Fund website, which is PlannedParenthoodAct.org. Then we also have our Twitter handle, which is @PPAct. And then we also have a Latino-facing handle, which is @Latinos4PP. So that's where the quickest way that you can get our resources and learn more about how we can help.
Okay, and that's Latinos #4PP, right?
Yep.
On Twitter.
Yeah.
Awesome. And so let's go with Stephanie.
So I'll just go ahead and, you know, I think that the thing I'll plug here is our Latinos Vote app. That's what it's called. It's really easy. I think we want to encourage people to become a portal for voter registration wherever you are. So it's on iTunes or Google Play. You can download it, Latinos Vote, or and it takes care of all of it. And then the other thing is, you know, joining our mailing list. You can join that at nclr.org and follow us on Twitter at @nclr_econ. And so, yeah, there are a lot of resources on our website, and you can even find the voter registration tool as a website as well.
Beautiful. And Ruby?
I want to let you know about a couple of things. If you're really interested in domestic violence in the Latino community, or you do that kind of work, please go to our conference that we're having in June. Our Latino Institute is going to be in Denver this year on June 20th through the 22nd, and you can find information for that on our website. Our Twitter handle is @Casa de Esperanza, so please follow us. And then I'll also want to let people know that Decimos No Más, that website, has a lot of resources for parents and people that are interested in how to talk to kids about these particular issues. And there you can also support us by buying products that we have. One that I want to tell you specifically about is our No More tie. We have a Decimos No Más tie that's made specifically for our project, and it's gorgeous, and it was made by a woman from Peru who's paid living wages. That was really important to us, to not get them somewhere cheap. And you can support us in that way by going to our website, getting our resources, and supporting us by buying that tie. And other products too. We have children's books in Spanish, a lot of things that you might be interested in.
Awesome. So that's casadeesperanza.org, right?
Correct.
Perfect. Thank you. And Alex?
So you mentioned earlier our conference. So our conference is on May 10th. It's going to be hosted in Sacramento. So if you go to our website, you can find more information about Latina Action Day Conference. Please, if you're in the area, you want to come, registration's open, so check that out. Also, follow us on social media. We're really looking to share as much information with as many Latinas as possible. So please go to Facebook. You can find us at Hispanas Organized for Political Equality, or Twitter and Instagram at Hope Latinas. And we are really close to 7,000 fans, so please help us get to 7,000.
Yay! Well, go and follow, and please support all of these organizations. There's really so much that we can do when we join forces, when we form coalitions, when we start working together, and also share all of this information. A lot of us have access to online resources, but you know, the people in our community may not have it for you know, whatever their circumstances are. So please support these organizations, follow them online, share the information. I gotta say something to close the tonight's show, because we went way over time. This is such a big area of discussion that we went way over time. But I want to close with this, and this is the message that I want to leave you with tonight. And I think it's perfect. I was at the White House Criminal Justice Summit yesterday, and the main speaker, the keynote, was Loretta Lynch, who is as we know, the what is her title? The Attorney General for the United States, and she said this phrase that kind of stayed with me because I think this is the way that at least I try to operate, or that I try to keep in my forehead in everything that I do. But she said, when there's a room full of women with a purpose, there is nothing that we cannot do. And I think that the ladies in tonight's panel are a testament to that. I want to leave you with that because so many of us come from families that have strong Latina leaders. Our mothers, our aunts, our sisters are strong women. We come from that long line of powerful women. And so just keep that in mind. When there's a room full of women with a purpose, there's nothing we cannot do. And that's my message for tonight. I will see you all next week, or in our next show. I want to thank Stephanie and Ruby and Alex and Daniela for being here tonight. You guys have been amazing for not minding that the show went for like an hour. So thank you so much. You have been illuminating our community in sharing all the knowledge that you gain every day because you're doing the work in the actual community. So I thank you, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much, all of you, for tuning in.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks, Mom, Tia, hermanas, primas, everybody.
Good night.